What are some examples?
Well, one way to do it very easily would be if you adopted a theory of time according to which all events in time are equally real. All events in time are equally real. That the difference between past, present, and future is merely an illusion of human consciousness. That the difference between past, present, and future is merely an illusion. On this sort of view of reality, the future is as real as the past, and they all exist equally robustly and are therefore available for God to know. So if God simply exists outside this space-time manifold, he can see, in a metaphorical way, everything that transpires in the manifold. So if you adopt this view of reality as a four-dimensional space-time block, foreknowledge is very, very easy to explain.
Suppose, though, God is not outside of time, but exists in time with us.
Rather, I would adopt what we could call a conceptualist model of God's foreknowledge rather than a perceptualist model. A conceptualist model of God's foreknowledge would be more on the analogy of innate ideas, Persons like Plato, for example, thought that we have innate knowledge of certain truths. Now, while that may not be a very plausible model for human knowledge, I think it's entirely plausible in the case of God, that God has innately the essential property of knowing only and all true propositions. And so the way he knows the future is not by looking ahead and seeing what's going to happen, it's simply by knowing the truth value of all propositions. He knows which are true and which are false, future tense statements, and so by knowing the truth value of future tense statements, God knows what's going to happen. The idea that they have to be real in order to be known is based upon this assumption of a perceptualist model of divine cognition. And that's, as I say, very anthropomorphic, to think of God as sort of up there looking down and seeing what's going to happen. Rather, God as an unembodied mind doesn't really have anything like perceptions because he has no sense organs when you think about it.
A head without a body. Can your horror match mine? Like all quantities, horror has its ultimate, and I'm that. Results of power, of magnitude.
Power? What power? Can't you see that you're at the mercy of every element of the universe? How can you speak of power?
I have power. My brain burns with it. Want me to prove it?
You can prove nothing. You're powerless.
I'll show you how powerless I am.
So God's knowledge is more like the knowledge of an innate, infinite mind, which has the essential property of knowing only and all true propositions.
What does that mean, though?
What that means is that one of those statements is true. Either you will eat pizza tomorrow for lunch or you will not eat pizza tomorrow for lunch. One of those statements is true and one is false because they're contradictories.
Right.
And God has the essential property of knowing which of those is true and which is false. He knows the truth value of all propositions. And if you are enamored with this perceptualist model, that propositions exist in the present. And so God can just look at the proposition and see what its truth value is. In the same way that he can look at a dog and see what color the dog is. It has the property of being brown rather than the property of being white. God can look at these propositions and see which ones have the value true and which have the value false. So
in the present.
Yeah, in the present, because there are presently future tense propositions, past tense propositions. God can look at them and see their truth value.
So
now, I think that's completely misconceived. As I say, his knowledge isn't like perception, but for those who are wedded to this idea of perception, they seem to have forgotten about these propositions that exist that God could look at and inspect.